Hello everyone, my name is Makeda Voletta, also known as the Body Scientist and Queen Lioness and the Renaissance Amazon. Oh, and Sensual Warrior. So those are my four names that I'm known by, and they each have a particular meaning as to why I go by them or where they came from. And a lot of you have been following my work. You know that I speak a lot about fitness and dance and women's empowerment and sexual energy and sexual health, and it all ties together, hence the Body Scientist, okay? But today, in this video, I'm going to talk a lot about the Black dance aesthetic, okay? I have been dancing since I was 5 years old. I studied classical ballet at the Dance Theater of Harlem and tap as a child. And you know, I as an adult, I began to study Black dances of the diaspora, specifically in the Americas. So dances of African derivatives, okay, but dances from the descendants of Africans, African people in the Americas, and indigenous people in the Americas. The dances that we have in the Americas, in North America, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean, all of the Black dances are a mixture of African and Native American elements, and oftentimes some European elements too. Okay, but there are several dances that are done here that are similar to dances in Africa, but they're different. And why are they different? They're different because of the experience that we had here. They're different because of the Native American elements. When you think about the slave trade, Africans, our ancestors, my ancestors that came here naked with no instruments, okay? So once people came here, they had to recreate instruments. And when they do that, they have to use trees and materials from this land, which is different than Africa. And anyone who knows about indigenous people, indigenous cosmology and spirituality and ways of being, when you are dealing with elements from a different land, you deal with spirits from a different land. And so there are changes. So there are African-derived dances in the Americas that are very different than what is done in Africa, okay? So I study dances of the Congo, and I study Black dances in the Americas. Okay, so let me make that clear. Now, with that being said, as an adult, and I started to study these things, I became resentful at the fact that ballet is considered to be the creme de la creme of dance. You're not really taken seriously in America as a dancer if you haven't studied ballet. And when you say you're a dancer in America, people either think ballerina or they think stripper. And no, I have no problem with strippers. All love to strippers. So I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I'm just saying that those are the two things, like, all my life that people always thought of. And you know, I'm from New York City, and New York City is the ballet capital. And we constantly get told that ballet is the root of all dance, okay? And dancers don't get taken seriously on a professional level unless they've taken ballet. But once I went on to get a degree in exercise science, and I learned about anatomy, kinesiology, and body alignment, I learned that everything in ballet is actually bad for you. The alignment, starting with the turnout of the hips. You may not be able to see me too well in this video, but in ballet there's always a turnout in the hips. That is the most unstable position for the hips. And if you think about it, there's no other sport or activity in life where you turn out like that. Only ballet. Also in ballet, which you may not be able to see in this video, they want your spine to be tucked under, okay? So if you have a natural curvature in your spine because you have a booty or you have hips, that's shunned upon. So in the fitness industry, what I teach my clients is to keep neutral hips. I'm not sure if you can see that in this video, but to keep neutral hips. In ballet, they don't want you to keep neutral hips. If you naturally have curvature, they want you to tuck your hips under, which then puts your spine in a bad position, which can cause you to get injured and crippled. And if you look at the stats on professional ballerinas, many of them are crippled by the time they're 35 years old. Okay, so the aesthetic in ballet is long and stretching and never moving the hips, okay? Never acknowledging the female parts. Nothing shaking or gyrating. That's just a shame. It's a big no-no in ballet. And you know, as I began to study folkloric dances from Haiti, from Cuba, from Brazil, from the American South, the dances begin in the hips, okay? They always begin in the hips. If you can't move your hips, you can't dance in these places, okay? And the footwork is also defined by the footwork, okay? Bent knees. In ballet, your knees are always locked in straight, your hips are turned out. In any African-derived dance, and Native American dances too, your knees are slightly bent, your feet are flat and grounded to the floor. There's a medicinal property of that, having to do with being barefoot and stomping and dancing on the ground, as opposed to being up. Like in ballet, everything is up, away, like you're too good for the earth, you're too good for earth-based things. It's not grounding. People who have trained in ballet for a long time, they usually feel like they're doing something inappropriate when they feel things shake and jiggle. I remember, I grew up around Dominicans and Puerto Ricans and other Caribbean people, so I grew up dancing salsa, merengue, and reggae and stuff like that. But I remember being in college and doing a Dominican dance, some Dominican merengue, some really fast merengue from uptown where I'm from. And I remember being on my campus, and there was, performing. There was a step we had to do where we had to turn to the audience, we had to shake. I will show you this video, but I know you probably can't see it because the video is cutting me off. But so a shake gyration, and I remember how people reacted, and I remember feeling so bad about myself, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But the more that I started studying these dances and learning their history, our history, my history, is encoded in those dances. And there's a lot that's said in the dances that's not recorded in history books. So I use the dance as a form of research, but it's also a form of medicine. Okay, so if you think about what defines the black dance aesthetic, a lot of people don't know that tango, the original tango, comes from the Congo. It's a Congo-derived dance. The Congo has had the biggest influence on black dancers in the Americas. A lot of times here people study West African dance, which West African dance is very broad, but in America, West African dance is like 5 steps. And it's like the djembe and the junjun and maybe a couple other things, maybe some sabar from Senegal, but West African dance is very broad. Now, but even with that being said, it's the Congo that has had the greatest influence on social dances in the Americas. Meaning that samba from Brazil is Congo-derived, so is capoeira, so is salsa and merengue, so is Jamaican dancehall and soca and calypso dancing. Most of the steps in Haiti and Haitian folkloric dance are very Congolese, even when the spirits are not Congolese. New Orleans has Congo Square. What else? Bomba from Puerto Rico has some Congo roots too. And so, like the Congo, and it's also what's connected to revolution a lot of times. A lot of times the dances that are connected to revolution in all these different parts of the country and slave revolts are Congo-derived dances. Now, the Congo is marked by extreme hip manipulation. Congolese dance, very intense hip manipulations. Hips are always going in circles. The shoulders are always moving in circles. The shoulders and the chest. The footwork is off the hook. There's not a whole lot of jumping. It's very grounded into the earth, and it's funky as hell, okay? And the more that I began to study Congolese dance and other black dances in the Americas, and I started seeing these common things, that mark it. And you look at the sports that black people excel in the Americas. Black people in the Americas, we excel at power sports. We excel at soccer and basketball and track and field and American football and tennis and golf and all the power sports that are explosive and require strength. People of West African descent have the highest percentage of fast twitch muscle fibers, so it makes sense that we excel at these sports. Now, when you look at our dances, they go hand in hand because the dances a lot of times have fast footwork, complicated fast footwork, requiring you to balance. You never, in African dance, you never completely straighten your legs. You never have pointed toes. The aesthetic is flex feet, slightly bent knees, okay? Whereas ballet, toes are always pointed, legs are always straight. And the original tango, as I was saying, is Congo-derived. The original tango came from Africans in Argentina. A lot of people don't know this because Argentina is such a racist country that they tried to kill all the Africans there. So there really aren't any black people there anymore. It's a very white country, but the original tango was not so stiff and like that, like the ballroom crap that you see, like in Dancing with the Stars. the rumba, the salsa, all that stuff is bullshit. That's not real rumba. Real rumba comes from poor black people in Cuba, and they barely touch each other. And it's a Congo-derived dance. It's a lot of shoulders, a lot of hips, very complicated music, and the footwork is still there, okay? And it's a sexual dance. It's a sexual competition between men and women. The ballroom rumba is very stiff and upright and has nothing to do at all with the real rumba. Now, the history behind that is that in Cuba, just like everywhere else, they made it illegal for black people, because again, it comes from poor black people in Cuba. People look just like me, people who are blacker than me. The white people in Cuba made it illegal for black people to dance rumba. It was a spontaneous thing, just like breaking was in the 70s in New York. Like, it just happened anywhere, okay? So they made that illegal, and the white Cubans would put on blackface and perform rumba for American and European tourists. Of course, these American tourists were white Americans. And so they did these shows, and this is in the 50s, for American and European tourists, doing these rumba demonstrations. But what they were actually doing were European court dances. It wasn't rumba. And because of these white American and European tourists that saw this, they took it back to America and to Europe saying, this is rumba, this is salsa, this is tango, and it was bullshit. That was not the original tango and the original rumba. It's actually way funkier than that. And most African dances, there's not a lot of touching, okay? But there's always, the hips and the shoulders and the footwork are always marked. The feet are flexed. When I take Haitian dance classes, we get yelled at to flex your feet. There's strength in flexing your feet. Now I've gotten into pole dancing, and I love pole dancing for many reasons, and I'm going to do a video about my sacred pole journey. Not in this video, but I will do it. There's so much I want to say about that. But even in the pole dancing world, again, the ballet aesthetic is taken up, where toes have to be pointed all the time, and that's beautiful, it is. But it's not the only dance aesthetic, and it bothers me that that's the only thing that's given validity, Even I have a video on YouTube called Haitian Dances in My Yoga, and I recommend that you check it out. And props to yoga, props to India. But the thing is that what bothers me is that our stuff, black, indigenous, Afro-indigenous dances and art forms, physical dances and art forms, don't get the same notoriety. Like, for example, in the pole dancing world, there's a lot of handstands and headstands, and most pole instructors that I know use yoga in the warm-up, which is cool. And they almost act like you have to do yoga in order to do a headstand or a handstand, or you must be a yogi. But one thing I always point out is that black strippers, which, unless I'm wrong, I don't know, maybe somebody can give me some different information, because I'm not an expert on strippers, but the little that I had gone to strip clubs in the past, like some years ago, and I really only went to black strip clubs, but from what I knew, white strippers kind of just walked around and sashayed around the pole and didn't do much. But black strippers, and it's not all of them I've been told, but the times I've been to the strip club, I remember seeing black strippers on super high poles, dropping upside down head first, doing crazy acrobatic stuff, and none of them had any lessons to learn how to do this. This is before pole dancing was even as popular fitness craze that it is now. So these women were self-taught. They do headstands and handstands, and you go to Jamaica, Jamaican dance hall dancers do headstands and handstands. The kids in New York that were breaking, and not even in New York, now around the world, but let's just start off with where it started. When kids started breaking in the 70s, they were spinning on their head on concrete. They never took a yoga class, they never took a gymnastics class. So I know that it's not a must that I take yoga in order to learn how to do this, okay? Because even in yoga, they might do a headstand, but they don't line their hips, In the black dance aesthetic, it's always like they're doing the impossible. They're doing the extra shit. And I say, especially black dance aesthetic in the Americas, because they come from slave codes and slave society and what we were allowed to do. They were also a form of medicine. Okay, so on the one hand, a lot of our dances were to show off and say, oh, you're trying to tell me that I can't do this and I'm not good for that. Part of it was a show off. And sometimes making fun of slave masters. But it also was a form of medicine, okay? The shaking, the dancing, the rhythms were a form of medicine. And it's something that I could explain in words, but you don't fully get it until you actually do those dances. I see a lot of people talking about embodying the goddess and embodying Well, one of the first steps to embodiment is dancing. You know, dancing for the goddess. Do the goddess's dances. Actually embody that. You know. So in the black dance aesthetic is different, and when you look at black strippers, now that the pole dancing world kind of wants to try so hard to separate themselves from the strippers, but I mean, again, I could be wrong. There could be something I'm missing, but from what I know, pole dancing became a big fitness craze because of strippers and all these tricks that they're now teaching in classes, and there's so many teachers who are so great at teaching them and breaking them down for you. It's my knowledge that came from black strippers and who self-taught themselves, and I find that to be so freaking impressive. And they don't get the credit, that they deserve. And everybody most people, not everybody, but a lot of people in the pole dancing world want to try so hard to separate themselves from strippers, as if strippers are like these nasty boogers or something. And that I can't get with. Also talking about the black dance aesthetic, especially in the Americas, they're all very sexual. You look in the Caribbean, you look in South America, you look in the American South, they're sexual, and there's nothing wrong with that. What there is something wrong with, to me, is ignoring the ignoring the sexuality and overtly sexual things. We all come from sex. We all have sex. If you're not having sex, then you have a sad life, and you need to do something about that. But sexual energy and sexuality is something that should be praised, and it should be fun, and not something that is always shamed, and everybody is looking down upon so much, because your ass wouldn't be here if your parents didn't have sex. Okay, so let's be real about that. But continuing to what I'm saying, there's a very good book that I want to point out. Actually, I have a lot of books that I've read about black dance, but one book that I think is really excellent is this book. It's called The Black Dancing Body. The Black Dancing Body, A Geography from Coon to Cool. And it's by a wonderful author named Brenda Dixon Gottschalk. Okay, I highly recommend this book for anybody who's interested in black culture and black dance. Okay, there's so much of, whether you're black or not, there's so much of our history and stuff in here. And in this book, she even has a chapter called butt, a chapter called feet, a chapter called hair. Because these are the things that, black dancers, it's different. We have flatter feet. People of West African descent are known to have flatter feet. We can't, we often can't point as hard as some white dancers can, or maybe some Asian dancers can. Also, the flexibility, we're usually, this is not always, but generally speaking, we're usually not hyper flexible. But that's also the reason why we excel at power sports. And I'll talk about that in my next video on strength and flexibility.